libraries as the grant manager for us. She also has a long background in helping people do collaborative partnerships in grant writing, which is why she's actually here today. Margaret Johnson, who's on the camera, is from the Marston Science Library as well. And Gio, you'll have to tell people.
I'm sorry?
You'll have to tell people where you're from.
Also in IQ, but I'm in the Department of Sociology.
So, just out of curiosity, how many people are in the sciences? Okay, and the social sciences? And the humanities? No humanities? Arts? Okay. Okay, well, so then at least all of these workshops are applicable to you, so please consider going to those. As I said, Bess joined us about a year ago. She comes from a long background of grant writing, helping nonprofits raise money through fundraising, helping them develop collaborative partnerships with people. And as you know, we're moving into a global research environment. And what you'll probably end up doing as professionals is working with people across the globe at this point on various grants that you're writing on various research projects. So it's really helpful to know how to put together a good research team. Bess's experience is really very valuable to everyone because she has that kind of experience. She's worked with museums, she's worked with NSF funding now, and I think we're really quite lucky to have her here on campus. So I'm not going to go into her long resume, which would take us the rest of the time to look at, but I do want you to be open to asking her questions because she's extremely helpful. She's a connector, and if you're aware of that term, she knows lots of people in lots of places, and she's always willing to help people connect to each other. And that's one of the things people in the sciences sometimes aren't quite as good at because we tend to be focused on our own areas of interest, and we forget that there's a whole other group of people that could probably contribute to the view and the focus that we're trying to develop. So on that grounds, please welcome Bess.
Thank you. So, how many of you have seen the grants management website at the libraries? Has Dr. Daniels pulled it up and showed you everything that's available there? One of the, maybe someone can put this for me because I'm not going to do too well with this mouse. Can you put the libraries thing up there? So I wanted to show you something valuable on that page, which is this one. This is the past awards. And all of you, was today your deadline for your applications? So you're finished, right? That's it. Done. You celebrating tonight? Yes, you should celebrate. Because it's not all about the results. It's about the process and the journey that you took these last few months. And yes, you've got your finished product, but you need to celebrate because in the real grant world, it takes so long to learn about your results that if you don't celebrate when you submit it, definitely you're really not going to be celebrating when you hear back, okay? It might be a small celebration. So what's good about this is these are all the grants that the libraries has applied for, and most of them have been received in our recent history. So if you want to peruse some kind of really good proposals, you can go to this site and click on these, and you will find this is the Vivo proposal. It's a software engineering proposal to connect scientists with each other. It's kind of like a giant asset mapping process. And the libraries is spearheading it with bioinformatics here on campus. And the proposal is here for you to see. It was funded at about $12 million. And so the entire proposal is here. you have to wait a little bit, but this is an invaluable resource for anyone who wants to see some well-written proposals. And they're from all the disciplines, because the libraries, if you think about it, there are 9 libraries that are part of the libraries, UF library system, plus law. Okay, law is a separate entity, but all of the 9 libraries are within this one umbrella. And these libraries touch all the topics within the university, correct? And so you're going to find a variety of disciplines featured here in this repository of grant proposals that you might not find in other disciplines. Yes.
These libraries, like this particular site, will have actual grant proposals that have been funded.
These are the,
All of those?
no, we're hoping that eventually over time, working with the Division of Sponsored Research, that we will be able to be the repository for all the research grants on campus. And there are issues of not wanting to share so much because of competition. In the humanities, that really doesn't exist so much. So that's why we're pretty open about sharing everything. And the libraries is one of the leaders in open access and making information transparent to the general public. And this is actually has no login requirement.
That's what I was saying.
It's
that
open.
If I graduated from UF, can I still do that?
Yes, yes. It's, you know, the library's philosophy is distribute information broadly, right? As broadly as possible, not just for the people who pay the tuition to UF. So I wanted to show you that because I thought that was an important site to come to see proposals. So let's go here. Do we think that we have most of the class here now and we can start? You think that's good? Yeah. Okay. Let me show the slideshow.
From the beginning.
I'm sorry?
You just hit F5 on the keyboard. I'll put the little on the bottom of the screen where it's looked at. Thank you.
Okay, so I have a real passion for collaboration, and most grants these days require it. So I would say that no longer is grant writing a solo art form. It's a collaborative grant art form where most funders are interested in dispersing their dollars to the maximum capability and maximum benefit. So if they're only distributing it to one organization, then those people who are making that decision feel that that's too limited. It's better to distribute one lump sum to several organizations in terms of the benefit and the outreach of those dollars. So it's critical that now, even though your proposal was probably for yourself, how many of you wrote proposals for an organization and not for a fellowship? 2. Okay. So this is something that definitely, from an organizational point of view, you have to involve other people. And even in your fellowship writing, I'm sure there were requirements that discuss what is your team, teamwork experience, how do you work with others, can you work with others, etc. So it's critical. So these are the 3 basic ways that you can collaborate or do work with others. And yes. Yes, and there's a handout.
It's the same thing?
Yes. Sure. This comes from the Wilder Foundation in their research of how people work with each other. The answer was, these are the 3 primary ways. Cooperation requires very little interaction. It just basically means, and very low risk. So it basically means, Bess, will you show up at my class and teach a course on, teach a class on grant writing and collaboration? My answer was yes. That's all Dr. Okay, so we're cooperating. I show up, I do the class. He doesn't really have to do anything. He had to make available Steve, who helped with the technology. I brought my crew. He had nothing to do with my crew. So that's low risk. He trusts me. He knows I'm going to do a good presentation, hopefully. That's cooperation. Requires very little effort in terms of where the two parties meet. The next level is coordination. That takes a little bit more of an effort to do something together. It's a little bit more risk. So coordination, you're not quite changing the way you do business. You're showing up and doing something, but it's a little bit more complicated and you need a little bit more discussion. So that might be volunteer coordinating of an event where you're talking to multiple people. It's a different level and it's a little bit more risk and it takes more time. And the final one is considered to be collaboration. And the definition that Wilder Foundation uses to describe what is collaboration has to do with deeper risk and changing the way you normally do business with another party. So it means that it's not business as usual. You're not just going to show up and teach a class. You're going to, if I were doing it with Dr. Daniels collaboratively, we would go through and we would sit down and say, okay, what's the agenda? What are the elements that you think are important? We would have to negotiate this. It would be higher risk because maybe he's never worked with me before, and this course is a new course, and he's never taught this course before. So there's a lot of change that happens in collaboration, a lot of risk, and this is where most of the things that could go wrong will definitely go wrong. The other two usually work out just fine. But in a collaboration, the parties are putting it on the table. And one of the problems that I found in sitting down, especially in grant writing, so you know it's collaboration when you're spending money and you're sharing it with others, right? As soon as you talk about money and there's other people at the table, that's high risk, right? And now you're having to negotiate a relationship where you're working together with another party that is in a new business environment, correct? So what I find is that people avoid talking about money and they avoid talking about what's in it for me. The number one thing you have to do when you're in your first meeting, when you're in a grants team that's from different areas, you have to ask each other, what am I going to get out of this? And then ask everyone in the room, what is it that they have to get out of this? For instance, I've done collaborative grant writing with parties that avoid the money topic until the end. So the whole narrative is written, everything's done, we have all the components, and then all of a sudden we have to bring up the money issue because the team hasn't done the budget, and the budget is the last thing that they want to do. So now they're talking about the money. All the effort and the work of putting together the proposal is done. Now you're going to create enemies because you've got to divide up the work and divide up the funding, and people aren't going to be happy. Whereas if that had been done at the front end of the conversation, you would have handled all of the disagreements or pressures. But in America, I think this is part of American society actually, is people have an avoidance when it comes to talking about money and how much they're going to be getting from a specific project. I try to push that conversation to the front end before people start doing the work. Because once they start doing the work and investing their time, then they're going to adhere more to that final result that they haven't disclosed. So I would highly recommend that you go around the room and have people disclose, why are you here, and why is this important to you, and what do you hope to get out of this relationship or this partnership or this grant project. And please include what you think you might need in terms of budget. What are you going to need in terms of budget? You don't have to use the money word, you can use the budget word. And that way, that discussion is up front and you can get over the anxiety of who's going to get what up front and have this understanding so that when you get to the end, there's no surprises. And that's where high risk comes in, is you want as few surprises as possible for the team. And that means that there's a lot of discussion up front about what people expect and how do they get their expectations met, or if they're not. Make sense? The other thing that I could offer you is that if there's a neutral person that you can get to facilitate the conversation so that everyone is on an equal playing field and you have the neutral person leading the meeting, that would also help a lot to get to a common ground and consensus of the group. Okay, so how do you get to a genius wow collaboration? The road has been mapped out by this book called Think Like a Genius, Todd Seiler. And his premise is that if you take two things that have absolutely nothing in common, like for instance, an elephant and an orange grove. You take these two elements that have nothing in common, and then you, in some way, put these two elements together in a way that no one else has thought of before. Then that's genius. That's how you're going to get to something that a reviewer is going to look at and say, wow, I would have never thought of putting these two concepts together. But when you do, it creates something new and innovative, and that's where the excitement comes in. So we're going to talk a little bit about this. Let's see. I think that it's all self-explanatory if you read this slide. So let's go to the next one. The first example is a project I worked on in 2005. And it was with Florida Atlantic University, the College of Nursing, and the Morikami Museum and Japanese Gardens. And you would think, what do these two things have in common? Absolutely nothing. So what kind of project would you do with the College of Nursing? It happened that the PI on this project is a nurse that also has a membership at the Morikami. And she noticed that when she would go to the museum and the gardens, that she would feel relaxed and spiritual and become centered. And she thought, wouldn't it be neat if we could prove that if people with depression come to the gardens on a regular basis and felt a decrease in their anxiety and in their depression, this might be the answer to all those baby boomers who are coming up in age and are going to have the #1 disease, which is depression. Depression is a precursor to a whole bunch of other diseases. So, and right now, medication is one of the primary solutions for that. And we started exploring this and trying to see, are there other studies that say that deliberately going to a museum or going to a park or going somewhere beautiful decreases the incidence of depression in seniors? And the answer was no. So we applied for this project, and later on I can show you the proposal, how it came out. But we had to look at what are the assets at FAU. What does the College of Nursing have that distinguishes itself? And they also had access to art therapy. So the project was to do 3 groups, 3 controlled groups. One group that would just go to the gardens without any intervention. They would just show up at the gardens 3 times a week. The next group would show up at the gardens and have a guided meditation. So, and it happened that FAU had a guided meditation expert nurse. And the third group was an art therapy group that would just meet in a classroom and have art therapy. And it did turn out that those people who went on the guided meditation had the largest benefit in terms of their depression. And it could be that in the future, a doctor would give a prescription to a senior person and say, just get a membership at the Morikami Museum and go to the gardens 3 times a week for an hour each day and each visit. And that would be the solution for that person, or possibly help them. The second example is one that we just finished doing with the libraries, and that's gaming against plagiarism. This was an NSF ethics and education proposal. So the call was, what's your innovative idea for reducing ethics problems and issues in STEM areas, knowing that there are different cultures involved in these graduate courses, and knowing that each culture has different knowledge about what's required in the United States and what's not. So I tried to figure out who do we know on campus that could help us. And first we came up with the idea that if it was a game that did the teaching of ethics as opposed to a tutorial or a book or a workshop or a wiki or other kinds of teaching methodology. So let's say it was an electronic game, a real game, where you would get points, just like a normal game. Do we have proof that that would be an effective means for teaching plagiarism, which is one of the expertise that the library and librarians have, especially at Marston? So I found out that we have Digital Worlds Institute on campus. How many of you know about Digital Worlds? 3, 4, 5, 6. So Digital Worlds has the capacity to create digital games. And we started to meet with them for the first time. The libraries had never partnered with Digital Worlds. We also knew that iCube was a program that was here to integrate NSF research students and people getting NSF fellowship awards. How could we bring the iCube program together with Digital Worlds and the libraries and create something innovative that the reviewers at NSF would be surprised to see? And hence we have Gaming Against Plagiarism, and it was just submitted on March 1st, and we're hoping that we're awarded the $300,000. So here it's about knowing who knows how to do what and how to put those people together and come up with an agreement to do X. So what are the basic requirements to being a good connector or someone who's very good at collaboration development? First, you have to know your own assets. And what's an asset? I have another slide that talks about that, but that's what you have access to, okay? So your assets are the things that you have access to. And if you don't know what you have access to, that's the first mistake, right? So what do you know how to do well? And who do you know? Who are your networks, etc. And then also, what is UF? Since this is your institution, what are UF's assets? There are many, right? There are far too many that it makes you dizzy thinking about how would you go about learning about all of the assets that UF has. And the first step is to desire to know what UF has available for you. And unless you know, for instance, if you didn't know about Digital Worlds, that's an institute that might be able to have an influence on the work that you're doing, but you don't even know what assets are over there, correct? So it's all about being curious and wanting to know more about what's here at UF and how to organize that in your mind so that you'll be able to access it if you need it. You also have to know about the assets outside of UF, if you can, in terms of your own focus. What's your area of research? What are you trying to learn how to do? And who else could be a possible help to you to get to your end result? So let's look at some of the definitions of assets. The first one is absolute time, which is everyone has a different opinion about time, whether they have it or not. But people will make time for things that are important to them. These are all the things that you could be possibly looking for in terms of when you're doing a proposal or you're trying to access other information or other capacity. Okay, let's go to the next one. So let's look at this story. This is the Cows on Parade Has anyone been to Chicago to see this? Do you know about the Cows on Parade? It's in many, many cities now. But, so in those cities, they might have alligators or horses or turtles, depending on that community and the icon that they want to use to represent their community. This was one of those outstanding collaborations when it started that just blew everyone away. And it started in Zurich, Switzerland. A tourist, his name from Chicago, his name is Peter Panig, went to Switzerland to see the first exhibit of cows on parade, and they were located throughout the city of Zurich as a promotional tool to get tourists to come to that city. And they were life-size, they're life-size fiberglass cows. And there were 815 of these cows all over Zurich. So Peter said, you know, we should bring these cows to Chicago because the tradition of cattle and cows and the stockades and everything is Chicago's history. So he came to the Chamber of Commerce because he's a businessman, and he said, we should do this, and I will make arrangements for finding out who fabricated the cows, and how could we do this? Well, they created a partnership with the Tourism Bureau, with the Chamber of Commerce, and with the Arts Council of Chicago. And the Arts Council of Chicago went out and got 300 artists, and the Chamber of Commerce went out and got 300 businesses to sponsor, each would sponsor a cow. And the money was paid to the artists to design an individual cow for that business. And then they were placed, there were 315 of them placed all over the city of Chicago, downtown Chicago. But they didn't put them all at one time, they staggered them so people would have to come, and it was during the summer when it was hot, so it was a tourism effort to bring more people downtown. Then the Boy Scouts started doing tours and leading people on the cows, the parade route. And after the exhibit was over, they auctioned the cows. So do you see that each step of the way, more and more people are benefiting from the idea, and they're trying to figure out how to spread the money and spread the benefits over many, many, many people. The economic impact in the first year of this project was $100 million. And then there were cities all over the country. It was the Boys and Girls Club, I think, went ahead and took this as their initiative. And so in most of the cities, the beneficiary is the Boys and Girls Club. They figured out how to make this possible in their individual communities. And in those communities, it's replicated exactly like this project. It's replicated exactly. So there's a group of artists that get paid to make the artwork, and then they're displayed, and there's tours, and there's marketing, and there's books that you can buy with photographs, and then at the end they auction the items, the cows or the alligators, and that money goes in to do it the next year. So it's a wonderful, beautiful system, and it is an excellent example of collaboration because of the multiple benefits that each player, each group gets from this. And another example of outstanding collaborations is Museum of Science and Industry. How many of you have been to this museum? 1, 2, 3. You have to go. It's an amazing place. It's amazing because of the director. So I wanted to just tell you a little bit about the director. He is an aquatics biology major. His name is Whit Ostrenko. And he came to the facility in the 80s when it wasn't doing very well. But he's one of these guys that lived on a boat, on a sailboat for 2 years and didn't touch land just to see if he could do it. So he's kind of out there in his philosophy. Well, they have a Head Start program You know what Head Start is for little kids? A Head Start program at the museum. They have a charter school for middle school at the museum, in the museum facility. They have a public library in the facility where you can go in and check out, as a public person who lives in Tampa, you can check out a microscope, you can check out software, you can check out a telescope. It's a public library and it's open during the same hours that the normal public libraries are open. So he's a very interesting person, and he's always doing things that push the envelope. So have you heard of Bodies, the exhibit? Right? Okay, so the first time Bodies came to the United States was because Whit Ostrenko put his life on the line. He had heard about this German scientist who was creating these exhibits out of cadavers. And the cadavers were actually coming from China. They were unidentified people in the beginning. But there was a lawsuit from the anatomical board indicating that they felt this was unethical to put bodies on display. And he fought that battle, and even before the suit was closed, they were going to close the exhibit or not start the exhibit. But he insisted that we should have this exhibit here for the public as an educational tool. He thought it was very important. And he took the risk, and the suit was dropped just in time for the exhibit to open. What that exhibit did was it completely erased all the debt that the museum had and established an endowment that is now funding the museum. So the first museum in the country to bring bodies was the Museum of Science and Industry. And now it continues to be a very exciting place where the general public can learn about anatomy. Okay. This is the last example I wanted to give. This was a project I was involved in between Goodwill. Goodwill is the place where you dump all your trash, right? Where you give the things that you don't want, correct? Well, it turns out that they also get all these musical instruments. And they don't know anything about it. You know, musical instruments require someone knowledgeable to fix them or to know the value, etc. I happened to be on the board of Goodwill, and I thought, you know, why don't we take these instruments that are turned in Palm Beach County, and we just give them to, you know, to the repair shop and have them repaired and then give them away to students so that they would have an instrument at no cost. And I found a funder who would fund the project for repairing all the instruments. So now in Palm Beach County, there's an application process for students who need a musical instrument of their own to apply, and then they get one of, this was the first group to get repaired instruments from donated by Goodwill. So Goodwill lost the revenue, but it was going to be minor, and all of these students benefited from their new instruments. Okay. So I wanted to have a little discussion and put you in a few groups because we have some time. So to talk about these examples that I've gone over today. One question I have, what do these projects have in common? And that includes the gaming for plagiarism, that includes the Morikami and FAU College of Nursing. So if we can just divide up in groups of 5 or 6, so this group would be right here, okay? And then this group right here. And then, let's see how we do this. Okay, 5 here. And then this row right here, if you could get together and talk. And this row right here, if you could get together. This is kind of a big group. So let's do... Could you come with this group over here? Okay, so let's have you 4 and then you 3 talk about this. And then if you all could get together. So you're going to have about, let's say, 5 minutes to come up with the answers. What do these projects have in common? And why do you think they were outstanding examples of collaboration?